Shadow Minister Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And before I begin, I'd also like to make some remarks in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the murder of Jo Cox. I never met Jo Cox, I never knew Jo Cox, and I'm very sad that I didn't, because seeing the impact that she's had on our politics in this place and the people who knew her, she was clearly an incredible person, and I don't think anyone can disagree with what she stood for, and in particular, more in common in our politics, and our politics is worse off without her. Yet again, we return to this government's vacant vacillation regarding our national security. And today I urge the Minister again to take this opportunity to strengthen UK cybersecurity from the threat posed by foreign state actors. Protecting the UK and its citizens is the primary responsibility of government, and still, in the face of clear evidence of increasing threats, this government fails to act. The risks of physical threats and the need to invest in defence are clear to all, and yet the government prioritises increasing welfare spending over the safety and security of armed forces personnel in our country. The situation is so serious that the Defence Secretary had to resign, as he could not defend the action of this government or the risks they are taking. And while the dangers presented to our cybersecurity may be less visible, they are no less real. Hostile state actors are working every single hour of every single day to undermine our democracy and our security. These are risks every member across this House will be aware of. It's chilling to know that when Iran shut down its internet access, social media accounts purporting to be pro-independence Scottish people stopped tweeting. Expert analysis has estimated thousands of similar accounts could originate in Iran, and as much as 26% of such accounts could be fake. Social media is now a weapon. We know hostile state actors have sought to attack and undermine Parliament. And just last week, we were told that spyware had been discovered in government buildings linked to recent high-profile decisions regarding China's controversial mega embassy project in London. Very happy to give way.
But a lot's been said about the device that was found in M8CRG, but of course, unless you're a member of staff, you can't get to that side of the building without going through the Home Office, which obviously raises very serious questions about the complex on Marsham Street, I think, more broadly. But does he accept that there is a pattern here of foreign malign forces impacting our institutions, whether it's our Parliament, whether it's even the sovereignty of the United Kingdom itself, and unless there is resolve by governments and all parties in this place, we aren't going to face it with the scale of the response that's needed?
Well, I thank him very much for his intervention and the knowledge and experience which he brings to some of the background of that particular case, and I entirely agree that it is incumbent on all parties across both sides of this House in terms of strengthening our national security and being clear-eyed of the threat of hostile state actors, which is something I'm going to continue to develop in my wider speech at this report stage. The evidence is clear that we face an increasing threat from foreign state actors. We need to take action to recognise these risks and prevent such attacks. Cybersecurity should be at the forefront of our defences. And for this reason, His Majesty's Loyal Opposition have focused again on amendments listed today as New Clause 15 and New Clause 14 in the hope that the government will not squander another opportunity to act in this bill. New Clause 14 requires the government to directly identify the threats we face, ending the prevarication we have seen in recent months by obliging the Secretary of State to establish and maintain by regulation a list of foreign powers presenting a significant cybersecurity risk to the UK. The amendment will strengthen the link between intelligence agencies and policy enforcement, ensuring that decisions by the Secretary of State to deploy special national security direction powers are based on GCHQ's verified risk assessments regarding hostile states and state-affiliated groups. not reacting after an attack occurs, but creating a proactive framework to evaluate and mitigate threats built directly into the UK supply chains, ensuring the UK is better prepared to deal with cyber threats and attacks from hostile state actors. With the risks continuing to grow, these decisions cannot remain at the political whim of a government that is reluctant to act. So let's talk about the dragon in the room. In 2024, the NCSC confirmed that China state-affiliated actors were responsible for cyber attacks on the UK Electoral Commission and Parliament in 21 and 22. Yet this government continues to refuse to recognise China as a threat to the UK. New Clause 14 would compel the government to formally recognise what is readily apparent to those on these benches, to our security services, and to so many members across both houses who have spoken with urgent concern regarding the security risks China and other foreign state actors pose to the United Kingdom. New Clause 14 would force the government to acknowledge that China is a threat. I turn now to our New Clause 15. In view of this established and growing threat, New Clause 15 compels the Secretary of State to review state-sponsored cyber threats to the UK's infrastructure, including, amongst other areas, the cybersecurity risks to surrounding critical networks in the vicinity of the Super Embassy site in the City of London. As I said during committee stage, there is simply no point in granting the Secretary of State powers to issue directions on the basis of national security if the government is not willing to be clear-eyed about the most critical national and cybersecurity threats to this nation. This amendment also strikes an important balance between ensuring parliamentary scrutiny and recognising and protecting the sensitive nature of some of the material which may be unearthed, by making provision for such information to be sent to the Intelligence and Scrutiny Committee of Parliament. Despite resisting calls to address this risk during previous stages of this bill's progression through the House, I am pleased that the government have now taken some action to address risks from foreign state actors. The publication last week of the government's National Security State Threats Bill comes in response to a sharp spike in state-backed intelligence operations, sabotage and proxy violence. The government's own explanatory notes state threats to the UK from foreign states are persistent and take many forms, including espionage, foreign interference in the UK's political system, sabotage, disinformation, cyber ops and even assassinations. Collectively, these are referred to by the government as state threats. Yet the bill itself does not once mention cybersecurity and contains no provision to require assessment of the risks posed. It does not apply to states themselves and therefore can only be complemented and strengthened by the amendments I put forward today on behalf of His Majesty's opposition. These clauses, New Clause 14 and New Clause 15, are clauses that no responsible government or member of this House could vote against. I turn now to Amendment 3. In the name of my right honourable friend, the member for Chingford and Woodford Green, exemption from disclosure and rights to fair trial. And I'm really proud to call him both a friend and to work with him on this issue, especially for his fight for the rule of law and fair trials as the Member of Parliament for Runnymede and Weybridge. This amendment would prevent the sharing of information with overseas authorities for the purpose of prosecuting crimes not committed in the UK, if the Secretary of State determines that the receiving country is one in which the right to a fair trial cannot be guaranteed. It would address genuine human rights concerns and would close a loophole in the bill that currently fails to anticipate politically motivated requests from authoritarian states. It will help block hostile state actors, such as Russia, China or Iran, from probing our systems to detect firmware backdoors or vulnerabilities within the UK's utility networks, healthcare systems, data centres and more. The amendment also creates a statutory duty for the Secretary of State to submit an annual report to Parliament justifying which foreign jurisdictions are trusted or barred from intelligence sharing. This alone would be invaluable and would prevent the many fruitless hours of questions and debate in this chamber from these benches seeking to get a clear answer as to whether the government sees countries such as China as a threat, as per my earlier remarks. I'm therefore pleased on behalf of His Majesty's opposition to be supporting the Right Honourable Member's amendment today. Before I finish up, I'd just like to pay tribute to the Chair of the Select Committee, the member for Newcastle upon Tyne, Central and West, and her comments, which were also shared by others regarding the risk from Internet of Things and cellular modules. I think this is a very important area which we need to get right. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to conclude by addressing the amendments tabled by colleagues on the benches to my left regarding digital sovereignty and the impact this approach could have on the UK. New Clause 13 is the clearest demonstration to date that the Liberal Democrats do not understand the tech sector or global supply chains. Of course, it's right to support British business, but it's not feasible or possible in a global market or supply chain to achieve full sovereignty. Rather, we should prioritise capacities and capabilities and ensure the UK has an indispensable role in global supply chains. Very happy to give way.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. I would just clarify that I don't think the Honourable Member has understood our amendment, which is about having a strategy, which is not saying that everything is sovereign, but we need to look at our tech stack and actually have a strategy over what is sovereign and what is the procurement of elements. So I would just remind the member to look at that our amendment again.
I thank the member for her intervention. I refer the member to her amendment, New Clause 13, particularly subsection 3, Part C, where she makes it very clear the burden on companies to deviate from foreign technologies, which I think would be quite a burden. We need to back Britain in key sectors, from quantum, photonics, chip design, innovation. In so many areas, we lead the world, not to try and fail to restrict influence on the access of global markets, not protectionism, but leverage, to back Britain and position us so we are indispensable in the modern global tech sector and supply chains. So no. Very happy to give way.
Would the Honourable Member agree that if we are to excel, we must excel on a UK-wide basis? Therefore, would he agree that it would be a very retrograde step to have part of this United Kingdom subject to another jurisdiction's AI regulations rather than those of the United Kingdom? And does he agree with me that it is imperative that the AI regulations which govern our digital sector are those of this Parliament and not those of the European Parliament?
I thank the honourable member for North Antrim for his intervention. I don't want any part of the UK to be subject to the awful AI Act which has been passed by the European Union. And I just want to reflect that Northern Ireland, and in particular Belfast, really is a technological powerhouse that we should be very proud of and make sure it continues to go from strength to strength as part of our fantastic union. And in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I repeat, we will not be backing New Clause 13 because we understand on these benches how markets and global supply chains work, because we believe in Britain. I beg to move New Clauses 14, 15 and Amendment 3.